Welcome to Blue Collar Mystics, the under-the-hood approach to the depths of human consciousness. So many mysteries, so little time, so many big words. That's why we aim to take the mystical and make it practical, usable in your everyday life. And you know, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your story. What happened when you started asking yourself the real questions? Like, who am I? What is this? Is it a hologram? Is this some kind of weird cosmic joke? Hey, these are the questions that we are trying to get to the bottom of as we explore the final rabbit hole together here as Blue Collar Mystics. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the stream. We are on a Transurfing safari with the lovely and talented Abbie Johnson. Welcome, Abbie.
Well, thank you. Happy to be here with you this evening.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I've said this many times probably before, but we're talking about Reality Transurfing, this book right here that Abbie and I both have a special sort of attraction to. And I had a coaching call today with someone who did too. It's so much fun to be able to talk to somebody who really enjoys this stuff. You know, the same thing kind of happened with James, aka Admiral Hits. Some of y'all may know, where I shared the book with him and he was like, man, I felt like I wrote this book to myself from the future to my present now, you know?
Yeah, it changed my life. And then being able to find other people, like finding you, somebody I could talk to about it. Because it's not like if somebody always comes up to you and is like, oh my gosh, this is such a good book, you should read it. And I mean, how many people actually do? It's very few. So to find the other people that like know it and live it and apply it, it's awesome.
It is awesome. And I understand too why people don't necessarily want to read it, because they're like, even with James, he's like, dude, this book is $50 and it's 900 pages. And I'm like, fair enough, dude, but I really think you'll like it. And he did read it. And
I want to say this because I feel like some people get the wrong ideas. This has nothing to do with the trans agenda. It's called transurfing.
like transcendental philosophy is kind of what I think it's short for, but I don't really know. It's translated from Russian, so nobody really knows. But yeah, I mean, it's not a discriminatory thing. It's not a ideology really per se. It's more of like a model of the world and a way to navigate it. So really it's about understanding infinity and using will and the elements of the self in order to navigate reality to your liking. So yeah, there's no political agenda. In fact, I mean, I think it's really more like an individualistic sort of take on spirituality.
Yeah, it's definitely about the individual versus the collective.
Yeah, which was very refreshing to me. That's what brought the book into my world to make so much sense of so many things, because there are so many different ideas and different perspectives that kind of get wrapped up in this book, from quantum physics to individuality and understanding the self versus the group. There's a lot of nuance in the book, but it's so much fun to talk to people who enjoy it and appreciate it. It's very niche.
It really is.
But that's the cool part.
But I think there's a lot of people that are interested. They just don't want to like do the time investment, which is why it's great that you wrote the summary. But
yeah, I was just about to say, shameless plug. If you want to get the gist of the book, you can do it in about 3 hours with the summary, and hopefully that's helpful. I think it has been. I've gotten a lot of great feedback on it, and I'm relatively proud of it. Going back through it, it's funny because when you're in the production stage of something, you just want to finish it and get it out as fast as possible, so you're
yeah,
kind of like battling against that, but then you're also battling against like perfectionism too. So it's this weird balance, and
eventually you're just like, I gotta stop. Just do it. Just post it.
just put it out. And looking
Yeah.
back, there are a couple of things that I could have done better, but not a whole lot. So I'm relatively happy with that. Like I put out a lot of things and been like, oof, I could put a lot of holes in this, but I've gotten a lot of really good feedback from it. My buddy Isaac, who's an amazing person, and he's a nurse and a coach as well. He recently finished it and really enjoyed it. And the guy I actually talked to on the phone today also recently finished it and had very positive things to say. So I appreciate that. I still think you should read the full thing, but maybe if you're like, hey, I don't really have 30 hours to invest in reading a book right now, I'll listen to the summary. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm fortunate that when I found it, it was on YouTube, and
I
my
think it
buddy PC
still is.
Greenwood read it.
Yeah, I think it
because I
still
was able to
is.
like do things while I listened.
Well, yeah, I think it still is in a couple of places. It's definitely on some other alternative sites and stuff, streaming like that. So if you're resourceful, you can certainly find it and ask around in any communities and stuff. You'll probably find some recorded versions of it that way. So I do encourage people to check it out. When I read the book, it really just tied the room together for me. And I was like, people need this. Or I don't know. I guess some people need it. Some people don't care.
I wish more people would be open to it because I think it would impact the whole. I mean, if everybody applied this stuff, I think the world would be a better place.
I think so
I,
too.
I realize I could be wrong in the wrong hand.
Right.
It's in the wrong hands. It could be bad, but I don't think that. I think that if most people understood just how reality works and natural laws, like to the extent that he explains it in this book and the simplicity of it all, um, yeah, I do think the world would be a better place.
I think so too. I think that it's really easy for us to get stuck where we are just emotionally. And I really wanted to bring this information out specifically to people who have been through the sort of dark night of the soul that I've been through, because I can completely relate to that. The feeling of helplessness, the victim mentality, the feeling like, what's the point? Existential dread. I have been there, and this is a book that got me out of that place and into a place of more self-responsibility, a healthier place, a place where I was more optimistic and felt more in control. Because truthfully, we can only control so much anyway. Let's talk about a locus of control, and that's just, you can control yourself for the most part.
That's yeah.
you know
If you're paying attention and yeah, and aware, and it's because how often I feel like before this book, I was in a fog of reaction and definitely in victim mentality. Like you can't make things better. That just is what it is. Or if you do, you have to work really hard. And um, this really snapped me out of it. Not to say, we default on old habits sometimes and old ways of thinking, but overall, I feel like this did the trick in me to realize my own self-empowerment. I have the power to change anything I want to.
Yeah, and I mean, you've demonstrated it quite well, with
Thank
with
you.
yourself, So that's really, really good. And, again, to anybody out there, this stuff doesn't necessarily happen super immediately when you start implementing stuff. There's going to be a little bit of a trial period and a learning curve. So whatever it is that you're doing out there, I hope that you're patient. We talked a little bit a lot. We talked a little bit about how how desire basically becomes intention last week, and how these sort of manifestations basically become ordinary. So ultimately, whatever it is that we're moving toward, there is this ordinariness to it, which is kind of heartbreaking in a way, like look at it the romantic way, because it's like you can never really have anything that you don't already feel just like is kind of mundane, already belongs to you, is for you. But one of the things that I've kind of done or tried to do is to just take that, like when I'm feeling like a little bit just bleh, I will take that emotion and use it as a marker toward goals that I have in the future. Like I just walked off stage and crushed it for 5,000 people. Well, right. Because what's funny about it and kind of odd and weird is that, and I know this just from past history of things, like I would walk off the stage for 150 people and go home and be like, nah, and do really well. And so I know if that's what ordinary feels like to me, then if I can transport myself to that place when I have that ordinary bleh sort of emotion, I'm walking around this afternoon. It's a beautiful day. I'm enjoying the day, but I still have this sort of visitor that's kind of just, bleh, and if I can push myself to basically implant that into what I'm looking to accomplish in the future, then that makes it seem even more ordinary. And it's a kind of a weird way to look at it, but that really is like, I think we wait for happiness, and we wait for happiness through goals, but the attainment of a goal doesn't ensure some big, happy, celebratory, kind of emotional type of experience. And sometimes it can, and doesn't mean that it can't, but very often it's kind of like, oh, okay, I did it. It's like he says in the book, it's like the exciting part of the sort of manifestation process, if you will, is like the beginning is the desire. And then the fun part, the second part, is whenever you believe that you can have it. You will actually allow yourself to have. That is the feeling. That's the exciting part. And then the third part is ordinariness. So the ordinariness is what we want to get to in order to have the thing, but the fun experience is in the allowing yourself to have and in adapting to the belief.
Yeah, and you can see that when you buy anything big, like I'm getting a new computer. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Like, and then the shopping for it. And then you have it and it's great. But like 2 days later, you're like, it's not a big deal. I have it now.
Right. Take a big trip, go on tour. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Did it. Neat. Now what? And I don't know. I don't want to be nihilistic or negative or any of that. Instead, I am trying to think about ways to use that as an advantage and be like, okay, we made $200 million this month.
Now I know how to make $200 million. Let's see what else we can do. It's always got to put you onto the next thing.
It is. And that's part of it. And he does even say in the previous chapter that there are multiple goals that you will work toward and attain and accomplish. It's not just one. I really do like starting out when I'm working with people, especially one-on-one, the idea of purpose, the idea of really a central goal, a fundamental goal And then, we've talked about this ad nauseum, but like, having a purpose and then having certain functions that are filled, and those can be many. And so the same is true with the goals. Those can be many also, and will be many. But just trying to find ways to get closer more quickly, to accomplish more goals more quickly and start moving forward. And this is a great chapter for that, because he's talking about what he calls forward to the past. And this is the truth drop of the book. This is the big moment where he tells you how to really implement reality transurfing, and gives you the magic code.
Yeah, because it actually, you get to see the shift. And that's like, I've experienced this and it was amazing. So, I mean, we'll get into that as we talk about what it is, but so forward to the past, what the heck does that mean, right?
That's a good question.
The past lies ahead is what he says. It starts with that whole nostalgia feeling. Like, you go to a certain place and for whatever reason it reminds you, you just get the feeling of a time in your past. And you can it's almost tangible, like it's, the feeling of nostalgia. It just pops up at random times. A smell, or yeah, when I smell like one time here, like the smell of the rain in Nevada smells way different than the smell of the rain here. And one time I got a whiff of the smell, like I could smell it, the ozone smell that you smell in Nevada. And yeah, it's nostalgia. It's but you feel it at certain times, and you miss a certain era of your life or the trajectory you were on at that point. So forwarding to the past is, you get to resume that lifeline. Maybe you deviated and you ended up on a different life path, but somewhere those paths can link. The path you're on now can link up with the path from the past that you were on at one point. So he gets into the fact that, physics says that time travel is theoretically possible. Like, there's no reason why it couldn't work. So this isn't really going into actual time travel to the past, but it's bringing the past version of yourself forward, and the past, lifeline that you were on, that you maybe for whatever reasons you made alternative choices. It's bringing that back around, because if it was a dream, if it was an intention, if it was a goal, why can't you have it still?
Right. And many of us might think that, oh, I'm too old. I missed the boat. I don't have that opportunity anymore for a particular thing. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the essence of that exact same thing doesn't still exist in a different form. So I love the
Yeah.
analogy forward to the past, because exactly as you just said, it's like, it's kind of a redemption. It's like, there was this thing, I knew I wanted it. Maybe I didn't make the choices in order to pursue that path, but my authentic heart's longing, the thing that the heart wants, still wants that thing. And what it wants is the essence of that thing, not necessarily a specific manifestation of it. As we talked about in the sectors and stuff, it's like you could have a play in one sector and it's the same play in a barn, and then you take that same play and then you change the cast and the actors and you take it to Broadway. Well, it's the same exact play in both situations, but
Or the same exact play, and you change the era or of the
right.
costumes. Yeah.
Exactly. The decor and the script has changed, but the play itself is no different. So thinking of ourselves, our heart, and what it is that we long for or want in this life, that's very likely the same thing that it's always been. And the idea of forward to the past allows us to have it in this particular incarnation and phase in life, and in the decoration and script that we are currently hanging out in, which is very cool.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is.
It's very much a hopeful type of idea, you know?
I think this is my favorite chapter of the book, if I'm being honest. I'm not sure because there's still quite a bit to go through, but this is the one that definitely impacted me, and I mean they all impacted me, but this was the first time that I was invited to try something and actually see the results of it, um, and it was powerful.
Well, let's talk about
It
that.
convinced the heck out of me.
Well, I want to hear that story, and I'm sure everyone else probably does too, because I think that will be very confirming and cool to share if you're
Do
willing.
we want to talk about the process of transaction first, or do you just want me to
Sure.
tell you how I did it?
Well, I mean, yeah, we can talk about the process of transaction first, and then that'll maybe set the frame for your story.
Okay. So the way that you do this, and you don't have transaction is it's a process, it's a transaction. You're um it's a quick little meditation, more or less. It's like running your slide, but it's it's how you can actually see the shift in reality while it happens. So it's not necessary, like, because just playing your slides and um paying attention to your goal frame and stuff like that, those are the more important things to do. But doing the transaction, just it convinces your brain. It, like, I want to say, just like kind of plots a new territory on your map. All of a sudden, you're like, oh shit, this works. And I think it's kind of important to do that, because before that, it's all theoretical. And you're like, yeah, I can see how that might work. But once you see it work, and you see where it literally feels like magic. It does this thing to your brain where you're just like, oh dang, like what is possible? It's all possible. Like, all of a sudden it's all possible. And so if you struggle with that, then this is a good thing to try. So he says that transaction has 3 parts. And the first part is to remember your central meridians, so the energy flows. Um, or the energy fountains, as he calls them. What I wanted to bring up about this is that I've been thinking about this a lot. When I first read this, I didn't know much about acupuncture and acupressure, but I kind of got into it because I figured out how it relates to dreams and dreaming through our friend Janine, and she was right. She's totally onto something there. But I never thought of the chakra system, because your dreams will also tell you when you have a block in a particular chakra. Like, I had a shoebox in my throat one time. Um, but so I knew I had a throat chakra blockage, and based on everything that was happening in my life, it made sense, right? But I never had thought about the fact that you have 2 channels. So there's 2 channels, which would mean, like, basically on every chakra, like, you can be blocked in your upward channel or your downward um meridian, right? And in acupuncture, there's 2 huge vessels that run through, like, two of your main acupuncture meridians are called the governing vessel, which is like closer to your spine, and it's like affiliated with your divine masculine. And then there's the central vessel, which runs up the front, so all through the center of the body. So these actually have names, and they're related to acupuncture and Eastern medicine and the chakra system. And so it almost makes sense that you could have a blockage in one or the other, like how he's saying that one of your flows could be constricted. Um, so that was a side tangent, but I thought it all connected really neatly, and I wanted to share it because I had to let it out somewhere. It's like when you make those connections, you're like, oh, um, anyway. So the first part is what he calls turning the key, and it's just remembering your central meridians and everything. But turning the key, it sounds weird, but he describes the arrows. Like, he says that, like, imagine that so it's a way to activate your energy fountains easy. And he said, imagine 2 arrows shooting out from your body, one, horizontally, so one in the front and one behind you. And I find it helpful to do your arms. Do you do the arm thing,
Mhm.
Owen?
Yeah.
or you're kind of like walking like an Egyptian,
Egyptian, yeah.
and you hold one arm out in front of you, like straight in front of you, and then one behind you. And when you turn the key, you think of those central meridians, and at the same time, like if you push your arms like one up, one down, you will, and think about those like your fountains, you get them to flow. And if you do this several times throughout the day, it's a quick way to activate those what does he call them? Your central meridians.
Hmm.
So that's step one, is turning the key. I feel like I'm just lecturing, so
No, you're doing great. I think you're doing
Okay.
awesome.
So after you turn the key, the second step is to connect to your slide, so your goal slide. And um, so you know how to do this already. We've talked about it, but you get the visual, you get the imagine all your senses. What does things around you feel like? What does it smell like? What's the emotion that you feel? Connect the whole thing. Do the whole your actual target slide. But he said that you should do this while you're walking outdoors and look at the ground in front of you while you do it. So while you're imagining your target slide, you activate your channels, turn the key, um, then you look at the ground kind of just a few feet in front of you and walk and imagine your target slide until you have it very crystal clear in your head, like all the sensory and all of that. And as soon as you do that, he says, as soon as you have it very well in your head, the picture of it, look up. And he said that you should note it, and then that's what he calls the clear sight part, right? This is step 3. He said you'll see a change in the nuance or the scenery. Something will change. He said especially in color, or he says hue,
Hugh, yeah.
um, but it's not necessarily just color. I mean, it's funny because um, like my daughter was sharing these videos with me or TikToks where like kids were talking about, do you ever notice how everything is more gray now? Like the color is being lost and everything. And it's like, it's weird that people notice that because I feel like I felt that way for a while. Like the color palette had muted sort of.
Hmm.
And it's, he said that, you know, you see this, well, I don't know. Do you want to talk about this part a little bit more?
Well,
I'll
no,
take a break.
I'm fascinated with that. I think it's interesting. But yeah, I really just wanted to kind of unpack this idea and then have you talk about your experience, because like you were saying earlier, it was kind of the first time you've ever had something where you're like, whoa, that freaking worked. Holy shit, like that's kind of crazy. And so, for anybody who's kind of new, I think have done a great job of explaining the process. I just want to hear what happened when you tried it the first time and it wowed you.
Okay, well, the first time it didn't work, and he said that a lot of times it won't work your first time because
It's like
you
smoking weed.
it works for me the first time,
Right,
but not this
not
one.
for me.
Um, but I think it's because importance, like, you almost feel stupid doing it, I wanna say, like, I felt stupid. My first time I was outside, and I should have thought of this out a little bit more. I'm, like, in my bathroom, but I lived in the middle of the country, but I still was, like, worried that people would freaking see me, you know? So I'm in my bathroom, and I'm like, "I'm gonna try this," and I was like, "Somebody's gonna see me." So I know that's why it didn't work, I did the whole thing and nothing changed. And, he says that when that happens, like, you didn't see a result, he said, "Take a break, come back and do it later." And, um or if you're tense, then that's not the time to do it either because, again, you can't have importance on this, it's just a thing. You're just actually seeing yourself shift lifelines. That's all. And he said that the the alternative space, like, every lifeline has their own little nuance, their subtle differences, right? So that's what you're perceiving. You're perceiving as the subtle difference. Um, and but that's the thing is it won't be a trick of your mind. You will notice it. Um, so he says not to do it indoors usually, because indoors you're not, staring at your cabinet, staring at, your bed frame or something like that, you're not going to see the difference. But I decided to practice it indoors the second time. I was like, I'm just going to try this. I was like, just so that way when I do it again, I've got it down. So I'm sitting in my kitchen, and mind you, I have this light switch in my kitchen that's on all the time, or this is my old house, but the light had gone off. Like, it hadn't worked for probably 6 or 7 months. So I never used the above head light. The light switch just always stayed on. So I'm sitting there in my kitchen, and I'm looking down. I turn the key, I activate the key. I connect to my target slide, and I did it so good. Like, I had tears in my eyes. It was perfect. Like, because I imagined the scene perfect. And if you want to know what it was just looking up at the statue of David, because like it's the like being there, seeing, like, in Italy and Florence and seeing it, right? So I'm looking up at it, and I feel or I'm looking down, but I'm imagining myself looking up at it and experiencing the whole thing. Well, I look up and I look at the wall, and all of a sudden the light overhead turned on, and I was like, what the fuck? Like,
That's
so,
wild.
and what's wild about it is that he talks about that in this chapter, that sometimes when you have clocks that break, it's not because the gears are dirty or whatever, that you've shifted onto a lower lifeline, more or less. Like, you've shifted onto a negative lifeline at some point. And the funny thing is I had a broken clock that was new. Like, I just bought it a couple months before, and it was fine. And then I replaced the batteries. It still didn't work. So I threw it away. I wish I had kept it, because he said that your electronics almost always will are a key factor. Like, you'll notice, like, with like a clock will suddenly start working again. He said not always, and that doesn't mean that you didn't shift to a different lifeline, but the fact that a light that was broken, like the light must have, like, went out when I was on a negative life path, and it decided to start working when I did the transaction.
Yeah, he definitely mentions that, and specifically clocks for whatever reason.
I know. I wish I would have kept the clock. Dang it! I'm like, I bet you the clock would have worked.
It may have. Yeah, I've noticed things too. I mean, sometimes I'm out and about, and I'll notice things. I'm like, that house, I don't remember that house being yellow, or like,
Yeah, I had a pink house in my neighborhood the other day. I was like,
like
that house
what?
was not pink.
That's not right.
No, and I know they didn't just paint it. I could tell it wasn't freshly painted, but it was pink. I did the same thing the other day.
So Laura asks, love this. So do you only observe changes right away or also gradually throughout the day? I would say also gradually, but the point of the exercise when you're out walking is to pick up on
You
something
noticed it right away.
right as you're doing the
Yeah.
exercise. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you shift lifelines, you are going to see nuance. It's not just going to be the one thing. It's not just going to be the light. It's going to be, you know, there are differences in that life path for sure. So this probably is what the Mandela effect is all about,
Or the butterfly effect, right? Remember that whole thing. It's like one
Yeah.
little subtle change tricks so many different, it has so many different cascading effects, right? Like, so yeah, so the Mandela effect, very likely, it is a shifting of multiple, like, consensus realities to another lifeline. And it's wild because I remember the Berenstain Bears, but
Me too.
yeah, but here we are, and it's Berenstain Bears. Isaac even had an old book, pulled it out. He was like, I swear, bro, I've got it. I've got Berenstain Bears. And I was like, all right. And then we pulled it out, and an old copy from like the 80s, Berenstain Bears.
Well, yeah, because it once you shift lifelines, it shifts all the way
You're there.
back.
Yeah.
Like,
We might go
the only
back.
thing that doesn't shift is the people, but the people don't shift. So, like, in a photograph, the thinking head guy,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
all these people
Yeah,
standing
yeah,
in front
yeah.
of it with their hand on their head, and he doesn't even look like that.
But
He
I thought
doesn't
he
have his
did
hand there.
this. I thought he had it here.
Yeah, he does now. And there's been other ones where he's like twisted in doing it. But if you look at the people in the photographs, they're all doing this.
Yeah, I've seen that where they're like at the statue and they're all doing this, but he's doing this.
So the people don't change. The real things don't if you think of this all as like a simulation, then the people are real, right? So they're not changing. They're still doing what they did in the past. That couldn't change, but all the scenery and the props and the nuance of it all can change.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's the scene in the decor, right? Like we were just talking about having a play put on in one area of the sector of alternatives versus having the very same exact play happen in a different sector. And in fact, if those sectors are near each other, they're almost impossible to tell the difference, right? It's like the
Yeah.
closer it is, the more similar. So the harder it is going to be to tell the difference. But the further away that it is, so it would almost make sense too that it would just be like a letter, Berenstain Bears, or like a
Yeah.
dash in a logo is there or it's
Yeah,
not.
because every page is gonna be the same, but we're just gonna change the letter and the name. Yeah.
Right. And it's a very subtle shift. It's a very slight seeming, like the Fruit of the Loom lady that was going off maybe a couple months ago about the Cornucopia thing. And they apparently were, this lady was crazy. Yeah. Jiff
It had a
versus Jiff.
cornucopia.
I think so too. Right. And so like things like this, it's mirror, mirror on the wall. It's not magic mirror on the wall, but it is now magic
No.
mirror on the wall.
Yeah. Jiff
Yeah.
versus Jiffy,
Jiff
then
versus
Cheese It.
Jiffy.
Yeah,
Yep.
it was Cheez Its. Always Cheez Its. With
Yeah.
a S.
So yeah, I mean all of those things, it's maddening, but that should serve as some at least circumstantial evidence potential for the idea of this particular
Shifting
exercise working.
lifelines.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess in a way you're looking for a Mandela effect. Though
Yeah.
it might be just a shift in color, but I mean if a house was not pink and all of a sudden it's pink, then tell me that should be evidence for your brain.
Whoa, dude. So somebody on Rockfin says they had a house burned down in the center of town. Hard to miss that. A couple days later, the house was back. Was on the way to a local smoke shop. 4 people had the same experience, and the conversations were hilarious.
Weird. I find this weird too. Like there's this house that's kind of like it's an old ruin here, but like they keep all the historical houses and stuff, right? So my daughter, since she was a little kid, always thought it was Justin Bieber's house. I don't know why, but I've always humored it because I'm like we call it Justin Bieber's house now. And my whole idea is that maybe on another timeline it was Justin Bieber's house and she just picked up on it when she was really little. She was like convinced.
That's funny. Well,
Yeah. Justin Bieber lived there once.
oh yeah. Well, it's possible. Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's a little bit about the transaction exercise, which is a big part of this chapter. It is a very, I should probably make a video about this exercise, and I'll put it up at some point. The other part of this particular chapter is this is where the big truth drop is. This is where the big secret of transurfing is, and how to choose lies in this chapter, Forward to the Past. He's talking about how important it is to learn to give up the fight, that the battle is what is keeping us from accomplishing our goal, that we can't help but fight the battle, that we think we have to fight the battle of how we feel, the battle of what's required, the obstacles that we have to overcome and fight and beat, the competition that we have to stamp out in order to get to our goal. That's all created by pendulums. That is all basically pendulums enticing us to fight so that we continue to fight and give out our energy, as opposed to simply walking to the letterbox, as he says.
And that's what he calls freedom, is giving up the fight. And that doesn't mean like you know what's important to you, but I'm just but really in all things, if you want to be more free, stop fighting with it.
Yeah. He even like relates this particular idea to the simple epitaph on the emerald tablet that, you know, and he says that if he would have said this riddle at the beginning, you wouldn't have gotten it, you know, it wouldn't have made sense. Which I think is very, very true. I do want to dive into this idea though about giving up the fight, because there's certainly nuance to it. But the pendulum rule is to fight. The pendulum rule is to do as I do. You got to suffer, you got to grind, you got to struggle, you got to hump, you got to, you know, do all of these things, and you got to be better and compete. Whereas if you are this particular unique expression, this snowflake, then there's something out there for you that is completely unique and different than what is out there for everybody else. So the typical mentality of fighting, grinding, hustling, that is for someone else's goal. It's not for your goal. Your goal is so completely unique that no one else could really attain it. So it's really about letting go of this. It's even almost like a compulsion to attain, to fight through, to win this sort of battle and get what you want, because you were so strong and your ego was so powerful. And in reality, you know, confidence and a lot of force is only going to cause friction and make things more difficult, as opposed to being able to just stay focused and just literally allow yourself to have the specific goal that is you.
Yeah, because the world is a mirror, and if I'm sitting there and I'm aggressive and fighting, then that's what I'm gonna get reflected back to me, aggression and fighting. If I think I need hard work, then like the mirror is gonna show me that I need to work hard, or that I need to have that. It's like putting
Exactly.
sand in your hand. The harder you squeeze, the faster the sand falls through your hands. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's crazy because we're trained and we are embedded and brainwashed with the idea that we've got to compete, and fight to find our place, as he says, like under the sun. But in reality, if we're really authentically being ourselves, if we are loving our heart with our mind, then we've got to know that there's something out there for us that's completely different and unique than everybody else. And that comparison is the thief of joy, right? Like comparison is also what creates and causes balanced forces. As soon as I compare myself to someone else, I'm like, well, I don't have a 77 Mustang in my garage, or I don't make $30,000 a week, or, you know, whatever, fill in the blank of what other people's accomplishments or successes or achievements look like. As soon as we do that, we are creating a ton of excess potential and summoning balanced forces, as opposed to being like, well, here's what my credo is, what my values are, what I'm interested in, and what I would like, and simply going for that.
Yeah, sometimes it's a matter of learning boundaries, though. Like, learning not only like how to define your own, but like where do you end and begin? Like who are you, and what are your values and stuff? And based on that, like what are your boundaries? So I don't know why I brought that up. It just felt relevant.
No,
So,
it is relevant, and we can talk about that too, because I don't want to. I want to try to give as much clarity around this idea as possible, right? Like I'm not trying to make some enigmatic sort of statement or make it confusing or cryptic or any of that. It's real easy to be like, well, just stop fighting, you know, and then you'll get it. But like I said, there's like nuance to this. It doesn't mean that you don't, you know, work for your goals or move forward. You know, these things all work together. But the idea is that you should be focused on something that's so different and so unique that it really shouldn't be about competing or fighting. And a lot of the fighting, I think, is too internal. This is something that I continue to deal with, just waking up. And if I'm in a mood or something, and I'm like, well, I want to fight myself out of this mood. Well, that's not going to work. You can't do that. You've got to
You just need to have a couple cups of coffee and then you'll be fine.
have a couple of cups of coffee. I think the best thing to do is go out and just talk to people. If you get in a funk, just start talking to people. Just go up and like give somebody a compliment. Say, hey, I like your shirt.
Well, I just meant waking up grumpy because coffee's usually the cure for me. Coffee and grounding.
Definitely.
Take my first cup of coffee with my feet on the ground.
In the morning, I've got to have coffee. It's a must. And I like to do my morning page. I have my little routine that I do, and that definitely makes me feel better once I've completed the first little routine of the day. But just being a little bit social tends to help me get out of my head whenever I'm in a funky mood. Just like say hello to some people, go down to the store and talk to my best friend at the gas station. I think
you could do turn the key. You probably need to like increase your energy levels.
Yeah, 100%.
To bring it back around to reality transurfing.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. And going on a walk is great. You go on a walk, turn the key, do those breathing exercises. I do those breathing exercises a lot when I'm walking. Not every time I'm walking, but a lot when I'm walking. And now that we've done and talked about this transaction exercise a little bit and turning the key, I'm going to make another video on it. I did one on Clear Sight a few years ago, but I'll just break this whole entire technique down and make a video.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll try to get to that Thursday, but there's a couple other videos too that I wanted to make about some of these other topics that I'll also post.
So back to the whole electronics thing, like the one thing that I found really kind of funny is that like when you think about the people on Facebook that and it's the same people, like you'll know who I'm talking about in your life, that are always talking about like how their life is shit and it sucks, and why me, this is happening again, why does bad things always happen to me. Like it says that electronics with them will always malfunction and break. And I think that it's so funny because I know this is true. And then, just experiencing the light turning on and then the broken clock and stuff, it's like, well, probably when I was in victim mentality, like shit did break a lot more often. And so I just like the energetic of it all, like everything is energy. So if you're putting out those vibrations, like your electronics are never going to hold up.
It's interesting. It is funny.
I thought it was funny. So it's like, you know who that person is. And they have like a string of bad luck when it comes to that shit. And it's real. Like their bad luck is real.
And it's crazy. It's crazy to see that. That's what blows my mind more than anything. It blows my mind even more than people who have good luck when people have bad luck. Because I'm just like, what are the odds? Like, how is this even possible that you would pick the one chair that's faulty to sit in that and it collapses and you fall? It's like, what? Like how it's so much evidence for this, I think the hard part is just breaking that pattern.
Yeah, it's learning that your bad luck is a result of your thinking.
Yeah, you're bringing it on, and it's subconscious. It's a slide. It's something that's gotten deep down into your psyche to become sort of automatic, and it's one of those things too, where, and yeah, somebody on Rockfin says the cars too. Cars also.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They have the worst car trouble.
100%. But yeah, I think you just have to learn how to flip the script a little bit and start shifting your mindset slowly but surely in the favor of a little bit more positive lifeline. Starting to see those good things.
Well, I started laughing because of the car comment, because I'm thinking about when I was in my 20s, my brother-in-law had just graduated from high school and he came to live with us, and he had a car and the car broke down and he was so upset about it. He found another car and the car breaks down. Like, I ended up with like 5 vehicles in my yard. I finally was like, you have to get them out of my yard. I can't have a junkyard in my yard. He finally got rid of them all, but it was like there was 5 broken down vehicles and he didn't even live there a year. It was wild.
That is wild.
But it's like it was all him.
Well, I had a friend who, kind of got into a funk like that, and he even left his Jeep in a junkyard for days and days, and the windows were rolled down, so it just totally ruined the car, just absolutely ruined it. And he was just having tons of other unlucky things happen, just terribly unlucky things. But prior to that, I just remember he was a really fun person to be around, really charming and positive, and great things would happen. And then he kind of went through this phase of this sort of dark, kind of sad, just really lazy kind of time where he kind of really was in that type of a position, just a very negative headspace, and then ultimately turned it around again and got a really good job, lost a bunch of weight, moved to another town, and got things going again. But it was interesting to notice the change in his temperament throughout all of those things, from being someone who was very much in charge of his life and enjoying it, to someone who was very much a victim, to someone who had turned it around yet again and felt in control and in charge of their life. So I've seen it like firsthand, how these circumstances can shift based on that outlook. It's really about attitude. That's where the leverage is at. Even if you don't feel good, you can still have a positive outlook, or relatively positive, and start focusing on the positive things. I've said this a million times, but it's still so true. I need to hear it, because no one's ever complained their way to the top.
No, they really don't.
It's impossible. You can't do that.
You see it and then you make it happen.
Yeah, you have to stay open and positive
happen.
and optimistic, and let the good news in. When the good news comes in, rejoice on that good news, celebrate that good news. And even as we talked about in the last couple of chapters, he says, even when the bad news comes in, you celebrate the bad news, because it's all ultimately taking you to your goal. You just don't know how.
And one big theme that he brings up too is that we always talk about how you have a choice, right? You always have a choice. You always have, with intention, you can choose your life, right? But what do you do if you feel like you don't have a choice? Because sometimes you do. You feel like you're in a corner and stuff. But he reminds you of this, like, you can never have choice. You're right. Like, if you don't see any choice, you don't have a choice if you have not cut the strings of importance. And that's it boils always back down to that, the more important you make it, the more it's gonna have to be balanced. So
Yeah, he talks about our sort of reliance on pendulums, and that sometimes we think we're free of them, but it's just enough slack in the string. It's just enough slack in the string to feel like we're free. But when we tilt one just a little bit, further down, we can feel the tension again. So those pendulums are still there, and learning to let go of those strings of importance, letting those go. Again, back to giving up the fight, surrender, letting go, right? Like, not surrender in a way that you're going to give up, but surrendering in a way where you're going to allow what is to be and move forward regardless.
Yeah. And then he kind of gets into black magic too, because it is necessary to talk about when you're doing anything that involves, I don't know, energy, and it's all energy.
Yeah. What does he say about black magic, Abbie?
I was going to tell you to talk about it, but I was opening the door for you.
Well, I can. It doesn't matter to me. I just would have very
The goal of
simple.
transurfing is never to try to affect somebody else.
Right.
That's basically it. So it comes back around to self. Like, if you are trying to change somebody else's trajectory, change their lifeline, you can consider that black magic.
And it
In
will
essence.
have excess potential, and it will result in balancing forces fucking your day up.
Or
And
more than
yeah,
a day.
yeah, for sure. But that particular thing that you're trying to pull off, it's gonna be nasty. So enjoy that. But yeah, I mean, people just can't help themselves, it seems like, within this sort of world of spirituality and stuff. They just have to dabble
We're
in
like,
black
oh,
magic. I'm a left-hand
I'm gonna
path.
cast I'm gonna cast a spell on that person. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like
I'm
if
gonna
you
put a love
mean
spell
to
on
do
them.
harm, harm is harm. So, and it will be repaid.
Yeah, big fan of free will here, and the limits of our own consciousness is us. That's it. We own ourselves. That's our locus of control. We can control to a certain extent what we do, and that's what we should be focusing on, not the other things. And that helps us, right? Like that's what eliminates those pendulum strings. Is now we don't have this importance of this other person's thoughts about us, how they view us, their validation. We're not looking for that inner importance, that recognition, or that outer importance of it having some grand sort of award or exploit. Instead, we're just focused on ourselves and what we can do, what we're moving toward, and no one else is really.
And it's important to remember that you're a guest in this world. It's not your world. I mean, your life is your life, but you're a guest here. So you can't abuse it. You can't abuse the systems. You can't abuse the other players. I don't care if you think they're an NPC or not. Like,
That's why I don't
that's
like that
not,
whole
yeah,
NPC
they're
thing.
people. They're people.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah, it's not because I don't think that there aren't people who don't think in this world, because my God, they're
yeah,
everywhere and they're in my way all the time. Just because people are in my way all the time doesn't mean I, have contempt for them or think that the world is overpopulated. Certainly there are areas that, wow, there sure are a lot of people in my way, but still they're people. And it's like, I used to be pretty mindless too, right? Like if I could think
yeah,
about myself 10, 15 years ago, whatever, I was just basically being used by pendulums, being, yeah. And that's where most people are. Most people don't even care. If you start bringing this stuff up, and that's what we were talking about at the beginning, it's like so refreshing to be able to talk to somebody about this stuff. It's like, yeah, most people couldn't care less. And that's fine,
yeah.
but it's really cool.
Well, and they don't want to give up their dependence on their pendulums. So when you tell them that, it's like, that's just looshing you. It's taking your energy. And they're like, what are you talking about? It's so important. They don't want to give that up. And I think that was probably one of the hardest things for me, hardest pill to swallow too, is that importance. Like, what are you saying? I shouldn't think anything's important anymore? And it's like, kind of,
Kinda,
yeah.
kinda, yeah.
Kinda,
Kinda,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's like that's just sacred cow. That's the sacred cow right there. It's that we want to hang on to this feeling of importance, this strange desire to not let go. And as soon as we do, that's what he's saying, then as soon as we can let that go, that's when we attain freedom. That's when we have freedom of the pendulums. But we really do have some weird, I don't know, I speak from my own experience, but like some weird, like infatuation with holding on to something as if there's something special about it, but it's no different than anything else at all.
That's Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of my favorite shows. Like if I need the TV on, I don't always sleep with the TV on, but sometimes I do. I'll just turn it on Netflix because I know it doesn't really have like ulterior negative stuff that it's trying to implant, so my guardian can handle that while I sleep. But there's one episode where he's been blocked and he can't learn firebending because he accidentally hurt somebody. So this monk or guru or whatever like takes him and helps him unblock his chakras. And on one of them, he's told he has to give up everything he loves. And he gets so upset by that because he's like, "Are you kidding me? I have to give up everything I love? What are you?" He's like, "No, it's so important." He's like, "Until you can let go of the importance, you won't ever fix this." And so he finally kind of settles into it and lets go. And it's so beautiful. It's like, it's probably my favorite episode, but
That's really good. That's really good. Yeah, there's a guy that I've been watching his stuff a lot on here on YouTube. It's just he goes by Psych Hacks. Psych Hacks, it's like one word, but he's like a clinical psychologist, and he talks about female male dating relationships. He talks a lot about dynamics. I think he's primarily a men's coach, but he has some really good takes in that world. But he was really interested in esoteric ideology, Buddhism, and on and on and on, and also in the context of a clinical psychologist. One of his videos is talking about love. And when he's talking about love, he's talking about how love is self-sacrifice. Love is, like we talked about unconditional love in a few episodes ago, being that flower that's in the field that you don't touch, that you don't pick. It's like true real love is, I think he calls it exalting the humiliated self is his definition for it. Exaltation of the humiliated self. Basically, if you truly love, then you would not desire to possess another person, but you would want them to have whatever is best for them. So 99 times out of 100 or more, that means that they should be with somebody other than you, which is heart-wrenching. Like that's the last thing
I
anybody
want
wants
it.
to hear.
Yeah.
That's my thing. I want that thing. That's it. But once you can let go of that, I'm not going to say you'll get it back, but once you let go of that, you certainly will get a lot of energy back. You certainly will get a lot of your own.
You love it and let it go, and it,
Yeah.
doesn't come back. What's that saying?
Yeah. If you love something, let it go.
Let
if
it
it comes
go.
back, it was meant to be. If it doesn't, then it wasn't.
It was never yours to begin
It
with.
was never yours anyway. So, and that's true. It's weird. I'm fascinated with human relationships. And I think that's so interesting because we find ourselves in a world that's so modern with so many creature comforts and technologies, but we have this ancient wiring at a biological level. So it's a bit of a conundrum, and there's certainly a lot to unpack there when it comes to this stuff. I think a lot of how we were taught to think about relationships from a very young age is horribly, devastatingly unrealistic for a lot of us. And
Programming.
It's been a very interesting case study, if you will, from my perspective, just because I'm a nerd and I can't help myself. I'm like reading like weird books like The Science of Kissing, It's like,
Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Maybe I should read that book.
Your mouth has, or your body has its own sensibilities and knowledge. It's like, I even wrote a joke about it. It's like The Science of Kissing. Cause like if you kiss somebody and it's like kind of doesn't feel all that great, then it's very likely that person's just more genetically similar to you, which is, so it's probably your cousin or something,
Oh man, that takes me back to the whole Secret Society of Good Guys thing with like, would you fuck your clone? Because then maybe it wouldn't be good. That really just put a wrench in it.
It kind of seems like it wouldn't be good now that I think about it, because it's like that because what you want is volition, right? Like that's
I just think it would be good because I think I'm good, you know? So I'm like, I think it
right.
would be good. And
That's
I
a
think
good
that like
attitude, though.
I
You
would
know?
know me. Yeah, yeah, and I know my body. So like how could that not be good? But I wouldn't fall in love with my clone. So that's probably
That's
where
narcissism.
that places. Yeah.
That's not healthy. I can tell you that. But but yeah.
Narcissism. That was good.
True. Yeah,
Clever.
yeah, that's perfect. My clone, definitely not my type. Way too moody. Oh my god.
Bitch.
That's so funny. Oh my god. But yeah, so I love it that that's one of your favorite chapters, or maybe your favorite chapter. I think that's so cool. I really enjoyed reading it today, and it was a quick one. It was only about 35-minute long chapter.
Well, it made me believe in magic. He says it's not magic, and it's not, but I mean, it made me believe in impossible things because I saw it happen in real time in my real life in a way that he said it wouldn't. He was like, "No, you need to do it outside," and I'm just like practicing it before I go do it again, and it freaking turned a light on in my house that didn't work. It was the most bizarre shit that ever like, and it made the noise and everything because it's like one of the the tube lights. So it's like I don't know. It
The
was wild.
fluorescence. So it was like
Yes.
doubt
Yes.
a bug
It's
zapper.
like, what the hell? It was awesome.
That is
Yeah.
awesome.
So do it because
Try it.
you might need a jump start, like a little freaking, um, yeah, a jump start to help you see how easy and possible this all is, and that it exists. The idea of other timelines exists. That this whole theoretical quantum physics stuff, it exists. It's real.
Let's just all try this exercise a couple of times this week before the next stream. And then maybe if anybody out there wants to share their experience, that'd be great. We can do it via chat. I can throw a link in the chat. You guys can come in and talk with us. It'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I'll try it a couple of times. I'll see if I can't make a video this week too. I should be able to about it. And then yeah, we'll share our findings. We have a little field report for everybody. Everybody has some homework for the week, which we haven't assigned yet. So let's give this a try. We'll do the transaction technique. Would you run us through it one more time again, just to refresh everybody really quickly? Summary.
Okay, so 3 steps. The first one is to remember your central meridians, and he said you can do the arrows. Imagine 2 arrows shooting out horizontally from you, and instead of using arrows, I just use my arms so that way I could actually physically do the motion, and just like Owen's doing right there. And then when you go to turn the key, you imagine the arrows like going in the directions of your meridians. So turn the flows on. So it's like you're turning your hose off and then turning it on. And so when you push your arm down in the front and like upward in the back, or whatever, then you're activating those channels. So turn the key. Um, remembering those your fountains, and then step 2 is to connect to your slide and like every sensory possible, the emotion, everything you'd feel while you're walking, preferably outdoors and looking kind of downward a couple feet in front of your feet. Then when you're finished and you have that goal slide in your brain very, very clearly, then you activate your clear sight, which is looking up, and then look at the nuance and see what's new, see what hues you're seeing, see what's changed. And he said it was very obvious. So, and if
So
you're,
yeah.
here's the thing: if it doesn't seem like it works, then you might already be on your target lifeline, the one that will take you there. So that's another thing. But I think more often than not, if you are coming from a place where you're trying to rebuild your life and things haven't been going right and you don't know how you're going to get to your goal, you probably will. You will see a shift because you're probably not on your target lifeline.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. But we can always change that by using the old forward to the past and getting to our target lifeline and to the essence of what our goal is, even if it was previously a goal that you had a different vision for. The essence of that goal still exists and is still attainable for you. It's not too late. You can still have that experience, I guess, should be the way to say that. And I'm try to give an example. Yeah, for me, I always wanted to be on Saturday Night Live. I thought that would be the coolest thing. And it still would be very cool. But now look at Saturday Night Live. It's a corrupt institution. It's not fun. And even back in the day when it looked really fun, as we found out over podcasts and a bunch of different cast members talking about the experience, was not a healthy or fun experience. So the essence of that experience would be to be working creatively with people, and especially on like comedy and stuff. And so, I mean, that's something I get to do very often in a bunch of different ways. And who knows what we might be able to do in the future. But the essence of that type of work, I do a lot of comedy production work. You know, I'm doing on a weekly basis. I'm producing like 3 shows a week here alone in Athens, and doing a lot of different styles of stuff. We're experimenting. We did a show last week called the Tournament of Topics. It's really fun, where comedians basically compete against each other with random generated topics they have to riff on. And then people move to the next round, to the next round, to the next round. And there's ultimately a winner within that. So it's like a really cool format, something that we tried out. And we'll be doing probably some sketches and stuff this summer as well. And so still get to do the essence of that thing, and the way that feels. And it's actually probably a lot more fun than being on Saturday Night Live. And I don't really think they get paid that much either anymore. They didn't get paid that much to begin with, but it's even less now, you know, because people are so desperate to be on it. But yeah, just as a simple example, you know, if there's something that you like, I loved doing little things like that when I was a kid. I loved making things and just doing short performances and making videos and little stuff like that with my sister, and skating boards and all, I don't know, whatever. And so we used to do a lot of that when I was younger, and it was always fun. It was always something that I enjoyed. And for me, my purpose is to bring people joy. That's like my main sort of purpose. And that can be done in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different functions where I can do that. I can be at the grocery store, smile at the register lady, and bring a little bit of joy. I can do a podcast like this, or I can do a stupid stand-up set, or make a silly video, or even just do a serious and honest video, and generally speaking, fulfill that purpose through that. So, you know, that's something that I think is really insightful and helpful. It helps me on a day-to-day basis to just be centered and to understand what my role is, and how can I do that, right? Like, how can I do that? So from the perspective as well as outer intention, how can I give my gift to the most amount of people, and do what I enjoy doing at the same time? That's really a pretty ideal expression and experience. And so we all have the ability to figure out what it is that we want to do and have wanted to do, what our expression is as at the heart level, and then bring that in to reality. And it could be in a simple, subtle way. You know, I'm doing like a presentation tomorrow. It's going to be fun. I look forward to it. It's really simple. It's really subtle. It's nothing crazy. But it's one way for me to share joy and some insight into people's lives. So I like that. It's good. And so I encourage everybody to maybe think about that a little bit, take some time, maybe do a little journaling, but let's all try this exercise.
Transaction.
Turn the key, connect to your slide, and look up with clear sight. I'm going to be doing it. Abbie's going to be doing it. All the people in the chat are going to be doing it.
So you may as well do it too.
But don't compare your results to anybody else's. But we will talk about what our experiences are. And it'll be fun. I look forward to it. I'll try to make a video, like I said, before next week on this particular exercise. Should be pretty short.
Make sure you do the Egyptian thing.
Mm-hmm. You got it. I will
that
do
like a teapot.
We'll throw that in there too. That'll be good.
May as well.
But yeah, thanks everybody. I hope you got some enjoyment out of this episode. Thank you so much for hanging out, and great to see some awesome people in the chat. Brittany Pickle Spears, Beads, Jamie Rainwater, what's up? Laura, how you doing? We got Abbie's in the chat. Abbie was up in there. I was in the chat a little bit. Everybody, thank you so much for contributing, for being here. Folks on Rockfin, Mr. D-Rec Patriot, I suppose. And we have a couple other people watching there in Rockfin. Feel free to drop us a line. Everybody in Facebook as well. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We'll be back next week. We're going to be talking about letters from the past. We're going to actually talk a little bit about this next chapter and some of the particular advice that people kind of write in, kind of like a John Deere, or no, not a John Deere.
Dear Abbie.
Dear Abbie, like a Dear Abbie letter to Vadim. But we'll talk about this idea of clear sight as well, and I'll get on that. We'll all practice and we'll share our results in the next episode. Thank you guys so much. Abbie, tell everybody where they can find you. What you got going on.
You can find me on Instagram at abstract1, spelled with 2 B's, just like it is on the screen here. And also you can find me on the Secret Society of Good Guys on YouTube on Friday nights at midnight, and Sundays usually between 8 or 9 p.m. Eastern Central Time, or Central Standard Time, excuse me. I've mixed my time zones. And yeah, hit me up if you're interested in fitness lifestyle coaching.
Yeah, hit me up if you're interested in some transurfing coaching / goal setting strategy sessions. That's what I really like. I really like the strategy stuff. And I have a pretty interesting skill set from working in prank shows and with a lot of weird people in Hollywood and stuff, and tech people and different things. So I love implementing the stuff, and I love solving problems creatively. It is a passion. So if you're looking for somebody to bounce off of, I'm your guy. Shoot me a message. Instagram, Telegram, Facebook, YouTube comment, just email address. I'm sure you can find on all that. But anyway, hit me up. Much love. Appreciate everybody. We'll see y'all next week. I'll work on a video and we will be back next week. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your week.
Good evening.